say. So if you have something to say, just put it in the chat. We will try to monitor that as we go, and hopefully include that in the conversation. But the conversation was around well, AI, which is a very generic term, and its influence on software engineering and vice versa. So how does software engineering influence AI, and AI influence the software engineering? And it's a kind of a broad topic with a lot of different opinions, but it does involve some, or at least in the discussion we had, it did involve some event modeling as well, which was quite well, maybe not surprising, but I
Not
was
really.
surprised
Not
by
really.
how it caused this flywheel to become more powerful, and maybe that's yeah. So let's continue that conversation. I'm not sure really where we left off. I don't remember, but maybe we can give a little gist to everyone. Martin, Adam, anyone?
Yeah,
Maybe,
I think,
maybe we should highlight that really none of that is scripted at all. So we
yeah,
don't have an agenda, nothing. So this is really just continuing the conversation we started and seeing where we end,
Yeah.
yeah.
basically. Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think a few things have happened since. I think in AI, when we were discussing this, I don't think the focus has shifted to specification driven development, as all the cool AI kids now have found this new way of getting software done better.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that actually happened when we were first discussing this in either Amsterdam or Munich, but it certainly has caught on since then, even more so if it was already being discussed, because surprise, surprise, to a recent update of mine, it's been focusing on code quality and all these things, yet we allow our specifications to be garbage, and I think AI is highlighting that. So where everyone's building, you know, their houses on sand and wondering why, the walls are so crappy and they keep cracking.
Yeah.
We need more, better mortar. We need more high quality bricks. Yet they continue to insist on building every house on sand. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I recently compared AI for a conference. I needed to find a good analogy, and I compared it to an accelerant.
Yeah.
AI just makes it faster. So if you have a process that produces, I don't know if you know the picture I always use for the big ball of mud, right? That little ball of, it's actually a dung beetle on top
Yeah.
of a big ball of dung, right? That's my big ball of mud. If you have a process that produces balls of mud, and then use AI in that process, you'll just get to the mud faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have
And I
such
think by
beautiful
now
analogies. We have.
with vibe coding, I think we have proven that we can produce a lot of crap really, really fast. And I guess
At light speed.
at
Yeah.
light speed, exactly. And I
Yeah.
think that the big challenge is how do we avoid that, right? How do we
There's a less popular comparison with alcohol. If someone is really a nasty person and they drink, they'll become
oh
more like that.
yeah, you become
And
more
if
of the
they're
real
really
you.
fun, they'll just be more fun and they'll be more pleasant. So an accelerant socially could also be used.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think let's not fail to mention your presentation at both the Exonic conference and at the Event Modeling conference really highlighted the multiplier effect of where we came from in terms of what computing gave us. I forget the numbers now, whether it's 10 to 50 or 5 to 10, but starting with the silicon chip itself, the transistor, going through to mainframes, home computers slash office computers, then an internet and mobile. All of these were technological breakthroughs that were these accelerants, right? And you highlighted just how much of a multiplier that was for the industry, and in so doing, things that were impossible were possible, and so different aspects of computing of the industry were now able to continue to accelerate past others, and so this is why tech is now, what is it, 40+% of the S&P 500 or something in terms of value. That's of course the record high that it's ever been. People are worried, but I think it's just there. I share your views. These will be, the trends going forward, and just the amount of value that you can deliver through information is a lot higher, has a higher multiplier, just accelerates quicker than anything you could do in the physical world. So we're not going to get 10, 100, 1,000 times X excavators digging gold out of the ground or something, but we are going to have that in terms of how much we can produce in terms of information, how quickly we can
Consume that
consume the information, process the information, but even more, with AI, really make the information work for us and take those next cognitive leaps. It's no longer just Google indexing the internet. It's now being able to do the part that we did manually right after we hit Google search, is to
make sense of
tie
things.
everything, make sense of it. Exactly. Yeah. All of these things that have been answered in various corners and have all these things related. So anyway, this is not a 101 on AI, but really, why we're here at a special place in the industry for now, because like you said, it's an accelerant. So if someone was already doing something really well, then doing this is going to be even better. Like I mentioned before, the specification approach is being realized because the accelerant has made everyone realize, hey, AI is great for some people, it's not great for others. How come we're having problems? And it comes back to like, oh, well, your specifications are bad. Your results from AI produce a bunch of hallucinations, and we need these really great large language models that are even better so that it can, quote unquote, read my mind. And it's the problem is a little bit earlier. You haven't specified to a good extent what you want, because the industry's been allergic to it. I personally, and people will know this from online, I blame Agile, but I don't think they can be really blamed. I don't think Agile itself is blamed. I think maybe some of the tooling and the way Agile's been abused, some will defend.
The interpretation of Agile.
Of Agile and monetization of Agile and all of this stuff. But regardless, I think what we have here, at least behind me, what I Kramered my way into is event modeling, which is something that we did without a name for a while, and really get specifications done right. I think there was a lot of stigma around specifications because if kind of likened to system design, that gray area, Agile and current ways of doing things said that specifying software is too big. We need to just build and get reactions from customers and all that. And we've shrunk that down to a zero, a loop you don't have to go through. If you get the specifications right, that check of whether you're going the right direction is actually done before any code gets written. Now, that doesn't matter if it's AI or a human.
And the interesting part of that, I think, is that if by avoiding the specification up front, what we do is that the code becomes the specification. And in the end, code is a very poor language to define what your system should do.
Yeah,
Or
you can't
what you
share that
expect
with
of the
people.
system, right? You can't share it. There's only a handful of people that understand it. You give that, and then you organize it in a way that is optimized for computer processing and not for human processing, which is, even in the world of AI, mildly different process. And of course, I've told you this before, but not publicly, maybe. Is that, but the way I discovered event modeling, or I discovered let's say the true value of event modeling, is quite opposite of the direction you came in. I came from the other side, where I said, okay, I want to get event sourced systems properly built. And how do you do that? And then there was event storming, which is wonderful, but that is there's a lot of emphasis on collaboration and discovery in that. But for the specification, it felt like a little bit too vague, let's say. and you need to be a little bit more specific about what you want. And that's where I started to. Initially, I thought, well, event modeling and event storming is more or less the same thing, but then you find out it's not. Right? That subtle difference is to me the essential difference in how do you approach it, and the slices feel like the atoms of a computer program. And there's much more emphasis on how does that information flow, and in combination with the interaction of a user, how does that flow and how do you describe it, which is that is the part of event modeling that I really like. Now, the part we've had discussions about that I like a little bit less, but I guess it's a necessary evil, is that how do you frame this nicely?
Yeah.
Don't worry,
The
I'm
several
fine.
stages of awkwardness that you have
Yeah.
to go through with a group of people to get to a correct result. And
That's part
as
of
I
the
said,
process.
it's part of the process. It's a necessary evil, right? And I still vividly remember all these. The first time you do event modeling with a particular group, you have this moment where they just look at you and look at the stickies and are like,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do? Right? Get that first event. Is this an event? Is that an event? No, those are not events. That's just something a user sees on the screen, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my first event is financial information rendered on the UI. It's like, what is that? Anyway.
Yeah, start to realize that events are things that affect state, and someone hitting F5 on the screen multiple times to see if the ticket's on sale yet is not necessarily an event, because it's not changing the state of the system. It's the output side, right? So
Typically, it takes quite a while for people to get that. Oftentimes, it takes about an hour in a workshop until people really understand what is an event. So sometimes I even have it in workshops that I realize, oh, people hate it. People hate event modeling. In the first hour, they hate it. They absolutely hate it. And then after an hour, they start to get it. And then when they warm up to it, it starts to make sense to them. But it can take quite a while.
yeah, they see the pieces of value from a process emerge slowly. One of the early ones that I see is most people are familiar with wireframes for specifications. If you've worked with designers or just on software in general, you'll have someone sketch things up in Balsamic. I don't know who uses that anymore, or Figma, or well, Figma is more of a designer's tool, but there will be the equivalent of the paper napkin sketches of wireframes, and people are used to seeing these given as a form of specification. Of course, they're not quote unquote good as use cases being written up in some, or Jira tickets written up as something you can put into a backlog and then use. But most people are familiar with wireframes, and so the core part of event modeling is the UX part, and which involves almost always heavily UI. And if it doesn't, you can force it to do so by giving, monitoring screens to sysadmins as users. That's fine too, but it really does give you a human interface to what's going on in the system, and that's why one of the first things that people will eventually kind of get to is that, hey, this is just like wireframes. I can step through this and understand what the system is doing, but what's missing with those wireframes is the rigor to really analyze if we have the information in the system to first of all show what you want in the wireframe, and of course that's where the devil is in the details. So between two screens, there might have been a process that involves 12 steps, and your wireframes miss that, and that's why wireframes are never thought of as something that's good enough to make estimates out of. But anything that's highly complex, you stretch out with a number of steps in between, and that replaces all the other stuff like story points. And then people start to get the aha moment. Oh, I don't need story points because now this workflow shows itself as 12 steps. And so I know that each step usually takes me a day or two to complete and program and test and deploy. So I can just simply multiply that. And so when people are yeah, get this initial, hey, this is event modeling, what the heck is it? Very quickly, they start to put two and two together. Oh, we're accomplishing this that I was doing here, and we're accomplishing, oh, that which I was doing with this other team, or this which I was doing with the systems analyst, this which I was doing with a product owner, the project manager. It starts to really complete the picture. And I guess the reason it feels alien is that they've never done all of those things in one place before. They used to go to Balsamiq for the design. They used to go to Jira for finding out what the next thing is to do, and so on and so on, right? So it's different. It's not more difficult or easy. It's just in a different place. And I believe it's in the best place because it has the least amount of bridges to cross and walls to knock down between all the different people that are involved in writing and maintaining systems, specifying them, and etc. Martin, any thoughts on that?
I think it's the same topic that we discussed also 2 days ago in our podcast, where it's like building a prototype. It's also how I explain it to people. It's really like building a prototype without any code, but it's more than just the screenshots, because you have a validated prototype. You have these screenshots and you validate, okay, we can build this. This is exactly what we can build. And then you can build this prototype in 10 minutes, if you just have 10 minutes, and then go to your business people and show it to them. And you get feedback after 10 minutes. And guess what? This also works with AI. You can build this prototype and hand it to AI, and you can have a discussion with it. Works equally well. I'm doing this all the time.
Yeah, you recently added in your Miro tooling the ability to ask your event model questions.
Yes, you can chat with your event model, and even now with I added the Tune support. So everybody's talking about Tune, the new bright and shiny format. Now you can even put more event models.
For those that haven't heard of the latest craze the kids are talking about, this is JSON is too verbose for AI. It's eating up your tokens too quickly. So we've discovered the magic of deleting curly braces to save tokens. Anyway, Tune's a replacement for JSON, for those that don't know.
Is it token optimized object notation?
Yeah, exactly.
Of course. What else?
I mean, it's CSVs and all these things that we already had. Like, hey, amazing if we don't.
What's wrong with Edifact? Anyway.
Oh my goodness, nobody talks about that old stuff anymore. But I like Tune. So it's still human readable, and you save 50% of tokens. So yeah, why not? Makes total sense to me.
I'm totally not tied to anything, and maybe this is my told you so moment for people that were, telling us to make a event modeling standard notation, and it would have been JSON, and like, oh well, look at this. Good thing we waited. If we had something specified in there. So it kind of maybe goes to show that if we do have a spec for event modeling that people really want, it has to somehow be independent of the syntax you choose to use, because maybe the specification has to be conceptual so that you can use Tune or JSON or something custom.
But it should be a data format rather than a data or a structure rather than an actual data format.
There is structure. I mean, the rules are there for a reason, and I think what helps why event modeling and event sourcing are really good for AI is that it forces a small set, the smallest possible set in my mind, set of patterns that you can use over and over to specify any information system. And what that does, that repeatability, is just as good for training us and our developers and whoever else as it is for AI, because now you have, and I've been, screaming at a wall, it seems, for the last 10 years about you don't need these ad hoc things. They're actually working against you. You have a book of patterns that has 50 of them, and I use observer here, I use a factory here, I use this. It's like, okay, do you have to? Maybe not. How often will I use each one? And so now you have a small sample size for each pattern. That's not good enough to really, teach how that's done. In event modeling and event sourcing, you have basically the input and the output pattern, a few things around automation. So all 4 core patterns if you want to include automation permutations of input and output, and maybe then a few more variations, whether you're changing the platform, whether you're changing the initiation of actions being done by the user or being done by the system. That's the only variations I can really think of after all of these years. And so with such a small handful of patterns, each solution is going to have, hundreds of them. And that is really almost like your context that you can feed, because there's a few of them in there. And that means you don't have to have a trained model to work this way. In fact, I have the opposite stance. I want, we were joking about this in your conference, Allard, when you said, "Oh, there's a new Claude 3.5. Look how we can generate an API." It's like, no, Allard. I'll be impressed when you can throw it at something dumb like ChatGPT 3 or 3.5 or Web LLM or something. Throw your system with the real dumb brain of an old AI and see how it performs. That's the litmus test of how good a system is, because we need these more complex AI models to be smarter. But that's just it's replacing the, like, oh, you need A players on your team to work so your company produces good software, and that's not scalable, right? That has a bus factor problem. That has so many other things. So our idea, of course, is to do the opposite, run the other way. When everyone is going into one thing, you have to see, well, what are they missing? What's out there that the herd mentality is going and not allowing progress. And you can see this in all sorts of aspects of life, and in playing poker or investing, you want to be the contrarian, but not a dumb contrarian, not just doing opposite because everyone's doing something. You have to have a reason and be right, and then you'll have a huge windfall. And I think that's what we've had. And over the last 10 years, we've been doing event modeling and event sourcing at scale, and have practiced the contrarian approach of realizing that I can do this with something that everyone else, but without something that everyone else wants. Everyone wants Gemini 3. I don't. I want to use the dumb ones to see if it'll still work. I know that my system's better when I test it against things that are not accurate.
You touched on something quite important there. That's very dear to me, and I think that's the reason. I guess most people are looking for the bigger models to solve their problem, because we as a very collective term, and let me just include me as well, because secretly we all hope that we find this AI thing that is smart enough that it can just say, I need a system to manage my personal finances, please build it for me, and just magically make it what I meant it to be.
That's for the Neuralink. You're getting ahead of yourself. That's
yeah, I know.
Neuralink. Then
ultimately, we all dream of this, and reality, that's not the way it works, right? You can't just magically say or expect any good outcome of a vague set of requirements, right? Mm-hmm. And we all hope that these models have been trained with so much relevant data that it will magically, well, it's not whatever you expect, right? And there's this aspect that I emphasize every time I talk about AI, and I don't want this conversation to be an exception, is this human in the loop process.
Yeah.
But a big problem is that when a lot of people talk about vibe coding, and I'm not talking about a little thingy that you vibe together and it works. I mean, I've done that and it works great. But if you start vibing an enterprise system, that won't work anymore. It will just produce so much garbage so fast that you can't sift through it anymore as a human being. And this is where we've had several iterations within Axonic about how can we take a process from specification to working software, because that's ultimately, I have a vague idea and I want software running in production, and there's one or two steps in between at least. And what struck me when I started to do more event modeling is that event modeling touches this level of detail that is low enough to be useful for getting the actual design and being very specific, but not so low that you start wondering about how am I going to do it, right? Those 50 patterns that you just referred to. You
Yeah.
remember that singleton was a good pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use it all the
Well, I
time.
use most often. Don't knock
So
the singleton. And if
it's
you're vibe coding, you probably got a lot of singletons in there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's good practice, right?
Yeah.
Um, and but it's also high level enough for people that are not software engineers to be able to understand really what's going on and to be able to validate that. But also in a very big system, you still end up with yes, the number of slices will probably be immense, but you don't look at individual slices. You look at what do you call them actually? With several
Workflows.
slices in a row.
Well,
Workflows.
you call them different things. You call them
Yeah, we call them journeys. But
journeys,
For me, it's a chapter. For me, it's a chapter.
chapters. Some people use
Yeah.
scenarios. I
we
use
need to settle on the
workflows.
term, but
Those are the blue things above my head.
Yeah.
I label them on the event model so you can see what's happening. But yeah,
exactly, and these make sense to everyone who works on the system. They see those words and know exactly what part of the system you're talking about, and then they see the steps and they know and they understand exactly what's going on. And in fact, if they don't, it's probably a mistake, or they have learned something new about the system they're implementing. But typically, it's a mistake in the design, and that's what the level of feedback loop that I think is really important when using AI to generate whatever software you want in the end. You need some ways to validate the process towards that goal, because otherwise you're just, there's a
Yeah.
certain angle of error that you'll have, and the further the less you correct it, the wider the bigger the chances that you're completely missing on what you're trying to achieve. So having this way of allowing users to give feedback on, is this the right thing? Is this what you meant? And event modeling really narrows that down. That's my experience. Like, is this the behavior that you're expecting of this system? And if somebody then says yes, then getting from that to code, of course, there's a bit of variation. There's plenty of mistakes you can still make, but they're much narrower. And in fact, you can generate one slice at a time. Was that a quote you had once, Martin? Just do something one slice at a time, whatever.
Just one more slice, you mean?
Yeah.
Something like, yeah.
And just add one slice, and then in the end you have a running code.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole thing that makes event modeling work is not the sticky notes. The whole thing that is the slices, because it forces you to think in these small processes and build these tiny blocks of functionality that you just put together like Lego bricks. And this is what makes people understand the whole story of the system. It's like a story. We are writing the story of the system, and if by slicing it down, you just go from left to right in small steps, and everybody can understand small steps. And this is also what makes it possible for AI to understand it. It doesn't matter if your context window is so large that you can plug in your whole system. And it won't make a difference. No AI can understand your whole system. It will mess it up completely. But understanding one slice, that's perfectly valid. So these small and tiny building blocks, they make this big difference. And if you want to change your system, you never change the whole system. You always change one slice. It's just a small piece of functionality. This is, for me, what makes it so beautiful and makes it work.
yeah. And I think what we're doing is we're passing off the expense of not doing this, i.e., what did we do before? We threw stuff against the wall and saw if it stuck. With the only way we get real feedback is to have customer do it. But I mean that's a crazy extremist thing to do if that's the only way you get feedback, right? But it seemed to be that no one can decipher the codes, the documentation. So the only way to really validate things is to have the end user be inundated with whatever was produced, and that's not right. And my concern is that as people are using larger models, more expensive models, and I have examples of people paying $3,000 per month per user, per developer in their company for their AI tooling, right? So it's crazy what's going on out there. I think a lot of this expense is that we're trying to automate the wrong thing anyway again, and basically capturing how we worked with Agile and just saying that instead of humans doing this feedback, we're just going to have the agents do it and not go through interrogating the design, but we'll assume that it wasn't interrogated well enough, and then we'll just have these agents go and then do the testing, the manual testing automated by agents, and that's kind of missing the point. And again, like the multiplier you said, Allard, you're just multiplying a flawed or a suboptimal way of getting things done. And to be clear to people, the only reason that event modeling and event sourcing and the combination makes this really viable is that we're not trying to make the best abstraction, right? We talk about this as a core concept behind event modeling and event sourcing, is that you have these workflow steps we've been droning on about. These slices are purpose built for each step, and so you're not trying to get a data structure that's going to work for other steps when you're trying to get this one step to work. And I think that's not what the majority of large language models have been trained on. And so you need to capture that process and involve the AI tooling that you're using to step into that level of scope, to not get distracted by any other abstractions written. And I see this all the time when I try to quote unquote vibe code a slice, is that without any extra prompts or pre-prompts, it will quite readily try to apply dry and reuse something I used in a different read model. And that's not the way things get done, right? I have to explicitly say, don't do this. And it gets, especially with the older models, it's really tedious because you have to reprompt the context windows so the amount of tokens you can use, or the context size is too small to give it better instructions, or it tries to cram in the entire solution depending if you're using cursor or not. I mean, you can specify these things.
Try to explain it to not use third normal form in 10,000 tokens, right?
So just like teams in companies, it's kind of it's a lot of hard work to convince your team of AI agents that you're working this way now. And so it's very similar to going in and trying to teach a company that this is how you do event modeling and event sourcing. You're working with multiple models instead of trying to get one abstraction that works for everything. And or even at the data layer or at the business logic layer, it doesn't matter. It's this idea that you have to centralize things, and then you've got something that tries to make everyone happy all the time. Your one abstraction is going to be a horrible compromise for everyone. For each one of those purposes.
I noticed while you were talking about the slices and the focus, and then telling the AI model to not get distracted and not apply dry. In the meantime, there's this comment that came in about aggregates.
I don't even see where the comments are.
The aggregates is also one of those concepts where if you look at an event model, there's no notion of an aggregate anywhere. Right? And I think that's a good thing, because explaining that, try to explain what an aggregate is in maximum 10,000 tokens. Right?
No way. No,
it's not going to happen.
I just wrote recently on LinkedIn, not even Claude Code does understand aggregates. So what happened is, I use a lot of AI to generate code. I told Claude Code, please fix my to-dos. I always have to-dos which specifically tell the AI what to do. And the first thing Claude Code typically does is take the aggregate and put on all the events, all the fields from all the events everywhere into the aggregates. So make it basically a data holder, because we might need these data later. It happens all the time. So not even Claude Code. Trained on millions of code bases, read all the DDD books, knows everything about event sourcing, has no idea what an aggregate is. It's
beautiful.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need to know. It doesn't need to apply that. No. Just stick to your slice, right?
Yes, exactly.
Just input, output. That's it. And then the output depends on some other things that might have happened in the past. Well, just use that, right? What do you need in your if statement? And then, where does that information come from? Which events in the past?
You have to force it to use these MCP servers. I remember when they were just called function descriptors or whatever, functions that were in OpenAI. I mean, I was really scratching my head. Do you really need a standard for this? You should be able to tell AI that I need you to give me, multiple choice answer of you're either having one of these four responses, and when you choose one of them, these are the data points you must fill out in each of them. And that is the only answer from the agent that I'll accept, is that if it fits the response, or one of the potential responses that I prompted it to. So, when I'm looking at we're looking at automating the whole vibe coding feel, tab complete your code, tab complete your event model, right? So as you're adding slices, there's no reason why this behind the scenes syntax for putting in slices like you see behind me shouldn't give you a little gray outline of the ones it's going to give, and you hit tab and it makes them for you. But how do you do that? You have to give it that structure and say your only choices are to fill in these slices, and they're either input or output slices. At the top of each one of these, you can either have, a process or a screen. It's either done by a human or it's something that's done automatically by quote unquote a processor, which is what we have. So really, giving those guard, it's no different than humans in an event modeling workshop. By the way, we have one coming up December 9th. The link is on our site, just so that if people were asking for it, Martin. So I did it last night. It's there.
Nice.
And so you can join for 4 hours with Martin and myself to get a deep dive into everything that we're talking about.
And you can guarantee people go through all the stages of awkwardness.
Yeah.
Properly, right? Okay.
Yeah,
that's very important.
Yeah.
Because you have to have gone through those stages to really understand.
They will suffer. Everybody will suffer.
Guaranteed suffering. Yeah, in German fashion, you pay for your suffering. You will go and you will enjoy.
And after it is all worth it. That's absolutely.
We always have these very, very poor taste cultural jokes between one another, Matt Martin and I.
yeah, that's fine. I guess that's fine. But I had an interesting discussion with a client today. What they're doing? So they all generate code. Everybody's generating code with AI. They said they have about a 50% improvement in the speed of coding and stuff like that. But they spend 3 times more time on reviewing PRs generated by AI.
Yeah.
How crazy is that? In the end, they do the very same thing, have crappy code, and they review the code. So we have all this performance improvements, and we're just throwing it away. And now you have crappy code, and you need to review code written by an AI. Who wants to do that? This is really horrible. But this is what's happening.
Making the situation worse, right?
Absolutely.
At least with humans, it's more taxing on them, so they're less likely to repeat their garbage production. They're going to start.
You know how these pull requests gets reviewed. I've been in the industry for 20 years. There was always the same pattern. Have a pull request with 100 lines, you get 20 comments at least. Put in 20,000 lines, and you get that looks good.
Yeah,
ship it.
Looks good to me.
Same with AI. You cannot review these pull requests. These pull requests are horrible. They change everything. So
yeah.
One example is that I found out that I'm actually not sticking to my own process that I'm trying to have others apply. Right? Is that the human in the loop process? But we're working on Axon 5, and we need to update the documentation, right? And we want to do that as with as little as writing as possible, because unlike someone here in this call, right, Martin, not all of us are really good at writing a book that reads very fluid. So I thought, let me use AI. So I told it, hey, these are the changes. We have a really good document describing the API changes. We said, generate it. So I basically let it just go, and then it created a pull request with a lot of changes. Beautiful. I think it came down to 60, I think it's dollars, but euros, more or less, whatever, of token cost. So not that much, but it still needs to process a little bit to get to that expense. And then we started reading. It's like, okay, that's incorrect. That's incorrect. That's incorrect. False assumptions. Yeah. False assumptions everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I realized I'm just asking it to vibe me the documentation as I intended. And then I took an approach that is a little bit more like the well, I won't compare it to event modeling, but a little bit more of the, okay, build me a specification first. So I asked it, okay, build me a list of all the
Oh,
files that need
nice.
to be
Yeah.
modified. And for every file, tell me what you're going to do. Tell me what changes need to be made in that file to adjust the documentation to that version. And now I've got one file of a few hundred lines, and you can just scroll through. And it felt a little bit like the event modeling specification, where you just go like, okay, I understand
Yeah.
that a document called command handling.adoc is about command handling. Okay, what is it going to? Oh yeah, that's indeed a difference. Hey, it forgot about something. Let me add this little thing that it forgot. And then you make it human interpretable, whatever, processable, because in the end, I think we very often forget about our own role in software engineering when we're building software with AI. Like, we are still responsible for what makes it to production. So if we produce something that we cannot check, do
Yeah.
you really feel comfortable putting "looks good to me" on that code review?
Yeah. This is why event
Many,
modeling.
many people do. Many people do that.
And that's scary.
Yes.
I think it brings into another topic that I've seen, is that many people have been calling for the need for new programming languages in the time of AI. Just like we have this tune thing replacing JSON because of token usage. There's the idea that people are saying, the current programming languages are not taking advantage of what AI is capable of. And it's like, yes, that's right. I fully agree. And I think that event modeling is a form of these languages, because we're already doing this test the hard way, the manual way, without AI for a number of years. And it's where we're getting like you said, that analogy to what you were saying, Allard, we're getting that dive into just that deep enough level that we can still understand, yet all the work isn't done. So we're not inundated by reading the actual production code to make the decisions. When we're looking at the event model, we understand that we're getting to a correct state at these larger hops called slices. And that's not too fine-grained for us to be swamped with review work and reading reams and reams and pages of source code to double check that it's working, or needing to manually test and kind of interact for hours and hours with the system. We could much more quickly, at this level of abstraction of understanding state progression, information flow, to really say, yes, that's correct, or no, that's not. And so I think, when we look at the future of programming, quote unquote, I stopped using the word programming a long time ago. Even though I was talking to programmers, I always call it information systems automation, right? Automating information systems, because that's what 99% of the programming out there is doing. Yeah, sure, you have embedded systems and some funky algorithms for searches and some other research stuff. That's other types of programming. But for what makes the world go round is information management. How you buy something at the store, or manage your insurance, or any of these things is really just information management. And so when people are talking about programming, most of the time they're talking about information management systems. And the geeks in us that took computer science in school or loved computers, they always wanted, no, but this important implementation details where the magic is. That's where I'm special. That's where I can do something. It's like, no, really, you're just punting the ball along to the next step, and taking this information, making it look like this, and that's it. The how isn't as important as you think to others as it is to you, right? So,
Yeah.
so having this sort of new language that's half implementation, half specification, really is the bridge that's natural. And when you said that, Allard, that you were able to, in your documentation, get to that middle step. You're not just reading through the documentation that it's spat out vibe coded for you, because that would take too long. You looked at the fine. You had to read everything to understand if it made a mistake. By going up a level, you went to something that's reviewable. You can make sense before you have to deal with the minutia of the implementation of the tiny details. And I think that's a really good analogy for what we're doing with event modeling, is making that for all systems. This is the proposed kind of standard that allows you to look after the software development life cycle from the very beginning to the very end, where you're managing changes and managing implemented systems already. It continues to be a blueprint. Just like, I mean, if you have a house, you buy a house or whatever, you want to make an improvement a few years down the road. Maybe something goes wrong with the plumbing, or you want to improve something. Did you throw away your blueprints because the house was done? You don't, right? You use them as a map now. The blueprint still exists, but its function is slightly different now. You can go and say, well, gee, I wonder, I don't remember. It's been a long time since this house was built. Where are the pipes? I need to change something, right? So you pull out the blueprint. It's no different. There's no reason to bring these blueprints once you're done building something and switch to an entirely different set of tools just because you're in maintenance mode. That's not the reality of how the world works yet. I think in software we have that.
I'm not sure if it's me, but your sound seemed to go down a little bit.
Oh, is it mine?
No, now it's back.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I just went too
think it
far
was
from the
still
microphone
audible,
here.
So Allard, what you was doing was basically spec-driven documentation. Is that the right term for that?
Exactly. But the stupid thing is, I realized in hindsight, that I was trying to vibe my documentation, which I know when it's about code, you don't do that.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I fell in the trap of doing that on the documentation. I thought, okay, what is the analogy of what I'm doing now for software, and what is the analogy of what we should be doing for software, which is how should we write the specification of what to do? Is well, I'm going through a transition. So just describe the transition that you intend to do so that I can understand it. And I think we very often forget that in a world where AI is getting more dominant, we tend to forget our own role. And I've had people come to me and they said, yeah, I fear for my job. And I said, why? Well, because AI is taking over programming, and I'm using the word programming on purpose now. What is your job? Please describe your job to me. Right? How much of that job is actually programming? Right now, it's a lot of time. Right? If you look at the time spent of developers or software engineers, whatever you want to call them, but much of that time, like 50%, 60, 70 maybe % of time is spent programming. And that will diminish to probably 10%. But if you look at the importance of everything we do, writing the code, I think, is 5% of the most important stuff. And figuring out what code to write, that is the most important stuff, right? That's the most
the
important thing to
understanding.
do. Understanding it, exactly. But if we spend so much time on doing something that's not important, but of course necessary to get our ideas to production, we should be happy there's something like AI that can take over. And we should be finding a way, how can we properly describe what we mean, what we intend, to something like AI to produce our code for us. And well, I'm looking at event modeling, of course, completely unbiased, but I think that if we find the right representation for event modeling to specify that in terms of how do we represent it for humans to understand, for people just glancing by, right? Developers need to understand it, management needs to understand it, but then also computers so they can process it properly and write the code for us. I think generating the code with the level of understanding that LLMs typically have today, yes, the bigger models and maybe even the smaller ones, I think is very reasonable. It's not that difficult. And if you do it one slice at a time, it's even reviewable. By human beings.
I think you mentioned this idea about.
Adam, you're pretty loud.
Oh,
You're
sorry.
pretty loud.
Okay, let me.
If you don't have a close.
I overcompensated for this here. Sorry.
I think that's fine.
How's this? Is this good? Am I normal level again? Okay. The thing that you said that kind of resonated here, Allard, is that there's a fine line between a boss telling a developer what to do or saying what's happening and and you telling AI that I want this. And the balance is interesting. It's trust or laziness. Which is it? Do you trust your developer, or are you just too lazy to fully specify what you want? Do you trust the AI, or are you too lazy to specify more, and you think that you can get away with the training that the model had to infer enough about your domain that you don't have to bother going into that extra detail? So like above, you might think that you can just tell the AI the blue, what the blue arrows are called, and then it'll magically know exactly what's below in those steps. And you get disappointed when the steps are not with what you had in your mind. So, okay, so now you have to say, okay, I'm going to, give the screens, and I'm going to give some of these events and the data within them. And then you'll be happier. So I don't know if that resonates with you, whether it's trust or laziness. I think that's kind of a neat question to ask.
The interesting thing is for most people, this specifying up front is still what they call big design up front, and everybody thinks that is an anti-pattern. We shall not do that because we learned it's a bad thing. But of course, it's exactly the opposite. And this is also why people are so afraid of AI. Of course, if your job is defined as writing code, writing the best code you could ever write, if that is your job, well, then your job is in trouble. If your job is to solve a problem for your customer, then AI won't take your job. It just will make it faster to solve those problems. But for us, at least for me, this is second nature. It's second nature to work like that. I want to specify exactly what a system should do, and then I think about, okay, how will I implement this? But most people have never done that. They have never specified fully upfront. They are used to read Jira tickets and think for half an hour, how do I translate this to code? Well, this job will change. But if you're used to work like spec-driven development, and I mean, for us, this is nothing new. We talk about spec-driven development for years already. Yeah. It's absolutely nothing new. For me, I'm very much looking forward to the future. I would be very disappointed if I have to write, in 5 years from now, if I have to write any code. I want to specify what I want, and then the smartest AI in 5 years should figure out what is the best way to implement this. Serverless? Great, go for it. I don't care. I specified exactly what I want. Go for it. That is what I think will happen.
Yeah, I think we're already doing that. I mean, when I'm editing the videos for the podcast and I need to extract the MP3, the audio for the podcast from the video that we record, I'm not memorizing the FFmpeg, options on the command line. I press Control K and cursor and say extract the MP3 from this MP4 and put it in the same location, keep the name, right? And or I list the directory and then press Control K and say copy the latest MP3 to this other location. And I'm not remembering CP, whether I have the -R option for recursively going down directories or whatever. I don't need to memorize so much. Now, there's a dangerous line that you can cross, is that you stop understanding what you're automating, and there is this idea you should always be familiar, at least with one level deeper of that which you're automating, right? And I still believe that, but I certainly don't want to commit to memory a whole bunch of stuff. And
what you don't do is you don't Control K and say, oh, make this a publishable video for me. By the way, take the most interesting 30 seconds for LinkedIn. Yeah. You don't say that, right? Because that's just overly, I don't know if it's broad or too trustworthy of the AI that you're using, but you don't say that. You're still very specific on what it is you need. And there was a comment.
And I think that hits the nail on the head. It's about scope. And I think we don't have range, like the entire industry is just fumbling now. What is the right scope? And I think this is why the spec-driven hype is coming up. It's really, it's going to give us the answers. And I think we have the best way to have the steps for automating things, because it has that level of abstraction. And I'm hoping that people find event modeling and event sourcing sooner, rather than having coevolution like we had 15 years ago with event sourcing, where after Martin Fowler wrote the event sourcing article in December of 2005, there was this coevolution in all these pockets in the world of you had baseline of CRDTs, you had with Martin Kleppman. You had Kafka people and others taking the event-driven approach and calling it event sourcing. And you had so many little pockets. Even within the people that know event sourcing, I know Jeremy Chassing is really honed in on the decider pattern, and that's the only way. And I really agree with that. I think that there needs to be some more explicit things to make differentiations for the business to understand that they're using the decider pattern. So this co-evolution, I think, can be saved. And I think event modeling is, if enough people understand about it, what it is, they'll skip a whole lot of needless dispersion into efforts that would have gone so much further if we had the concentrated efforts. So this is why event modeling is actively being set out to be simpler, not more more complex. People are always asking, well, I need to have I need sagas in there, and I need this, and I need that other pattern. Why can't you have this? And it's like, because I want, and I think we collectively want a simpler system, but
Why can't you just have if statements in there, right? And
Yeah,
just-
branching.
That would be
That
so
would help.
nice.
Yeah, we
That is
just,
really missing.
why don't you just go around the long way to make UML all over again? It's like, no, that's not the point. That didn't work the way that Grady Booch wanted it to work, and we're not going to suffer the same fate. So this is this is kind of the idea that if you keep things simple enough, and the battle that we have, and event modeling 2.0 is to not have more features, but for event modeling 2.0 to be simpler, so that it's more applicable everywhere, more universally applicable. So we discussed this on the podcast recently, where it's quite opposite of the drive that most other versions of approaches or systems have, where like, oh, version 3's got so many more bells and whistles, why don't you use us? This is not a marketing campaign. Our version 2 is really a usability and applicability campaign, where actually removing fluff or refining rules to make them more strict but simpler and more applicable is actually a benefit. You now have something that's easier to implement with all whether you're doing it manually or through AI, the rules that you have to specify are now simpler. So that's kind of why I see event modeling as the best answer right now to that spec-driven development that AI is turning into, because the secret is out. It's not AI that's the problem. It's what people are telling it to do and how they're specifying what they want. It's not complete. Yeah.
So two things that worry / annoy me in event modeling. One thing that worries me is simple is good, too simple is not.
Yeah.
But that's always the fine balance. I don't know if you remember AMQP. I used to be implementing AMQP. What was it? 9.2, I think, was the last version I implemented back in those days. And then 1.0 came out, and they did a complete overhaul of the spec to make it simpler. And it was so simple, it was practically unusable. At that
Yeah,
point.
of course. Yeah.
And a lot of libraries abandoned it. Said, okay, we're not doing AMQP spec anymore.
There's lots of examples of that, but I think I hear your concern, and of course, because we use event modeling day to day, we're guinea pigs for, hey, we've made this offer for ourselves. So
I trust that it's going in the right direction.
not just us; it's the community, right? It's not just us.
Exactly. You will see immediately if it works or not. So if we make it too simple, the first workshop will just fall apart. So you see it immediately.
We have, there's surprisingly, there are people that, I see Jeremy's decider pattern as keeping it as like, hey, this is all just functional programming. It's all F#. It's just, you're putting images on top of F#, and it's just mathematical left folds of everything. And okay, when you explain that to a business person, they're like, what? Get away from me, math geek.
What are you talking about?
So there are things that are that are simpler. So I'll give you an example of where simplicity is making it into event modeling 2.0. And behind me you have some given when-thens, kind of like, oh, what's a given when-then? A business person might ask. Well, that's a problem. If a business person's asking you to say, what the heck is a given when-then? If I say given when-then to a family member at a dinner, Christmas dinner or something, you know, what's that? Explain that to me. So I want to get rid of that in event modeling, as many of those, like, what's that mean? So the given when-thens behind me are just going to be replaced with example timelines. Where, like, hey, these things have happened now. I want to see what this read model shows. Okay, so you put that in there. You can add some more events after that, and you can choose to show the same read model again and how those subsequent few extra events have changed what it shows. People understand what a timeline is and progression. So, you know, we're not going to call them given when-thens in event modeling anymore. We're going to call them timelines, right? Those permutation explanations, we don't want to use those words. We want to say that, okay, well, here's some example timelines of how this screen at this particular workflow step can vary. I was like, oh, great. So you're at the invoice step. Well, you know, what if someone, you know, you say, Adam, that you have no branching. But what if I want to apply a promo code at this point? Why can't I have a branch for that and point an arrow flowing away to something else? Like, well, because it's going to mix up the story of how you understand the system. The minute you add branching is the minute that you start to lose the power of story in the human mind to remember. And so, well, if you're into those details and you really want to find out, you look below, and there's a timeline for examples of different data that can be put in there and how it acts. And one of those examples is, hey, apply coupon code, and look at that. You got the 5% discount. Did I have to muddle the picture up above? No. Did you get the answer you needed to implement that field that says promo code on that, on one of those steps? Yes, you did. So, yeah, it's the simplicity is not necessarily to remove parts, but to really give them better names and better shapes, so that they're even more widely available to people that need to use the specification to drive things forward. And so, I think what we realize is that because we're doing event sourcing, a lot of the patterns and things that we have in event modeling, the terminology, we dragged it into the house on our shoe. Aggregates in a swim lane, you name it. There's so many things that we dragged in, and you know, you got to take before you go in the house, you got to take a stick and poke that stuff out of your shoe and take the hose to it. You know, we're two of us are dog owners here, so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have kids, so that's the same.
Okay. More or less, typically doesn't get under your shoe, but never mind. So it does remind me of a rule that I always apply when doing event modeling, and it is also related to another frustration that I have, not with event modeling itself, but a lot of these business, let's say non-developers, they very often go like, oh, no, design is not, no, that's a technical thing. You do that with the techies. I'm like, no, wait, get over here, right? You get in the room, because you are the target audience for this thing, not the engineers. Or maybe not the target audience is not the right word, the primary audience, so to say. But we as in a very collective community of engineers, have a track record of using terms that people completely do not understand, and they're just tuning off and just not wanting to be in a room full of engineers anymore, because it will just take 2 minutes before they start talking about stuff we don't understand. And aggregates and sagas are such words, right? And nobody knows what they are. Not even the developers know.
Not even
they love to they love to use those terms. So I always say to the developers that are in the room, you shall not use the word saga. Aggregate. You're allowed to use events. You can name automations. That's fine, right? If you want to say saga, just say automation, and most of the time that's okay. Maybe you don't mean the exact same thing, doesn't matter, right? Because the other side of the table, you don't want to be be inclusive to them. So don't use words that they can understand, that they can, if they don't know the words, at least can place it somewhere where they can make sense of what you're saying. And that's the side I like about event modeling, but I'm frustrated by the fact that we've got this history where people are like, okay, there's 20 developers in a room, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Why not? Right? This is going to speak your language. I did that at a very large Dutch grocery store organization, and they're talking about their payment processing flow. And right now they have, if you buy at a cash register, it's this system. If you do self-service checkout, is another system. If you do mobile phone checkout, it's yet another one. If you pay for your grocery delivery online, it's yet another. They want to consolidate that. And they had all these things that were so complicated and it's so complex. And I said, I'd love to see it, right? Let's give me this, what you now call a timeline, right? Let's go through, give me one timeline of a situation. Let's start simple first, so we build a common understanding.
Yeah.
And this one gentleman was like, okay, I'll leave you to it. I said, no, you're not. You're here.
Yeah, I'll leave you to
it. And you're gonna.
That's that lazy versus
timeline,
trusting, right? Was he lazy or trusting?
Trusting.
Yeah.
Because he thought he wasn't needed for that. But yes, you are, because otherwise, I don't want this to become a technical discussion.
Yes.
And because that's a trap we fall in the whole time. After a while, he did leave us to it because he had another meeting to go to, and then he came back and we modeled all of the difficult flows with all the exceptions. What about if they use coupons and did a credit card payment and then a debit card payment after that for an extra part of it? No problem. It wasn't complex. It was actually very easy. So only just doing that event modeling session already showed that the system that you currently have is implemented way too complex because of dry, right? Because of thinking everything is the same thing. But it's really not that complex in the end. But for some reason, and that's the part that frustrates me, that non-engineers feel excluded up front. Like, this is not something for us, right? The techies are going to discuss how the system should work.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Why is that? Why is that such a common thing? And how, more importantly, how are we going to get rid of it?
I think that's just trained behavior. That's what happened in the last 20 years. It's just trained behavior. And event storming, I did a lot of event storming before I came to event modeling, and this was the same. Most of these event storming sessions were very, very technical. So the business people joined there, but these sessions weren't good. These were very technical. And even event modeling sessions, they tend to become very technical if there is not a facilitator in there who stops these engineers from talking tech. So you need someone to guide the people. Engineers talk tech. I think that this will never stop. But if you have a facilitator in these sessions, you can really get very good sessions. And the more of these sessions we do, the more these business people will realize we're all speaking the same language. In these sessions, this may be the only place in the whole company where everybody is speaking the same language.
Yeah, this is why I try to amplify, like change the names of these things to be timelines. So I want the fewest causes for what Allard was saying about people saying, oh, this is not for me, like this is for developers to talk about. And it's one of the reasons I love the fact that we focus on UX so much and have the UI components in as a first rate actor in event modeling is you need that computer human interaction interface at center stage so that when people look at this, they have the familiarity. Oh, that's wireframes. In fact, in the tooling that we're building, we want to have an ability to turn off all of the stuff below. And really, if you hide enough on the event model, what you have is the wireframes. And that may be the first walkthrough. That someone that's never seen it is the thing that makes them feel at home. With all those things hidden, they're like, oh, that's cool. I have a whole bunch of names of workflows of how someone, I don't know, in your case, Allard, how someone pays for something in the grocery store, and how someone puts something in their shopping basket or specifies their address for delivery. whatever it is, they see those blue arrows at the top, and they see a bunch of screens, and they see places where they would feel comfortable interacting with the system and putting something into a text box for something to be done. So yeah, that bridge of like, hey, these are geeks in the room, and I don't feel comfortable here. That needs to go. And I think event modeling and the tooling around event modeling is going to be that bridge where everyone feels they have equal say in what's going on in the system, and equal access to understanding of the system.
Last week I was in Switzerland, event modeling workshop with 10 people. 8 of these 10 people were engineers. There were only 2 business persons, and it worked beautifully well. We didn't talk there was not a single talk about technology in 2 days. We only talked about business, and everybody loved it. So it's possible. It's really possible. You can do it.
But they needed you to guide them, though, because
yes, exactly.
Because they like, I find that they all within an hour or two, the geeks fall into their regular patterns of
15 minutes if you have the right engineers in the room.
And they talk about, hey, is this going to be a queue, and is this going to be a stack, or we're going to use Kafka for this, or when are we going to talk about some event sourcing things about whether I need to close the books here, and how are we going to do that, and how many nodes are we going to have for availability.
It was really interesting because at some point in time in these workshops, you always hit this point where there are really hard questions that you cannot really tackle. So nobody has the answer. And what these engineers did immediately was, okay, we cannot answer that right now. Let's postpone the rest of the workshop. Let's talk about the implementation. How can we build the architecture for this? Immediately that happened.
Yeah.
And if you don't have anyone, I immediately said, no. That's not why I'm here. We can talk about technology. That's another workshop, but not today. If you don't have these people in the room who stop that immediately, you have a technical discussion.
That's quite beautiful, right? We don't understand what we need to build, so let's just discuss how we're going to build it.
Yeah.
This is exactly what really, this happens all the time.
Let me put my communist hat on, and this is a capitalism.
You know why that happens?
Yeah, people want to be productive.
If people want to be productive, they want to do something. It's hard to talk about these problems. They want to do something they know. They want to tackle something they did already. I want to talk about technology. I feel productive because I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm a perfect technician. But this is not what these workshops
are. It doesn't really mean that doesn't really matter what we're building, right? Because we're going to need Kafka in the end anyway.
Exactly. Let's do the Kafka integration.
Install it.
We do event sourcing. This means we need Kafka. Let's build a Kafka cluster.
That's for sure. Sorry, your connection broke up, I think. It almost sounded like... Anyway.
Too many inside jokes here from the events.
Yeah. That's not good.
But you touched on, so I noticed that we've been discussing about, let's say the software development process, right? But there's another aspect to AI, and I think it's more related to event sourcing, which is a lot of systems, no matter what process they followed to be built, are so state obsessed that, and again, that state is all revolves around all those little things that we find in common, like the nouns typically, right? Oh, there's an order, there's a customer, and we have these attributes of an order, and we have these attributes of a customer, and now third normal form, because that's the solution to every problem we have. And now we can build anything, right? It all starts with a beautiful data model, and then we could put all the behavior. Behavior comes second.
Yeah, slap it on later.
Oh dear. But and that's the part I love about event sourcing, because it keeps those timelines intact that you were talking about, right? The timelines which are needed for us to understand what a system should do. Then we can validate and test whether the system actually does that according to the timeline. But now we have production, and now we have the real timelines that happened in real life. And I have a feeling that people also underestimate the power of that when it comes to AI and training training models on what actually a system does and getting value. I feel that we throw away so much information in these systems nowadays that, which I think for us is natural, right? If you do event modeling, it becomes very natural to build a system where the events are important and therefore you keep them.
Yeah, we see that already, like applying AI, having context is key. And what best context to have than the evolution of state of how you got there, right? We do this in our own heads anyway. So this is like good for AI. This is why we have event sourcing. This is why event sourcing makes sense to be a default, because we are event sourced beings ourselves. Allard, if you just moved, do you immediately forget your old address? No, right?
Personally, yes, but I don't know.
That's another story.
And there's things there's reasons why you have to remember your old address. It's not like the minute that you move, you take an eraser to everything and put in the new address. Your mail will have to be forwarded for a while, right, from the old address. You might have to still take your kid to school in the old school district for the remainder of the year and then switch next year. There's so many things, so many projections of that event of moving in your life that need the history. And it's just, and we somehow, well, I know how. I mean, we had the expensive storage in the initial stages of computing that was an unspoken truth. People make all sorts of excuses for this, but I see it as it was just not feasible to store every historic event to be available on an online transaction processing system, so that I didn't, I needed to minimize how much I stored. But that came along with us as a rut in the road that we can't get out of, and having this event sourced way of thinking, of doing things, makes much more sense from a human perspective. And because the AI is an extension of, and learns from dialogues with human beings, and that training materials of human beings, that actually makes it better for taking advantage of the large language models out there, if you have event sourcing and a history of state, not state, but events that can be projected into any forms of state that you wish.
I think we underestimate in the brain how much. I recently had a discussion with somebody, and I said, that's our brain, how our brain works. We capture the events. Very often these events are associated with emotion as well.
Yeah.
And emotion is really good glue for the brain, right? And it's kind of the trigger, like, hey, this is something I need to remember because it's an important event.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of emotion coming around. But, and I had this discussion, and somebody said, yeah, but I don't need that to remember the names of my nephews.
Yeah.
But why do you remember the names of your nephews? Maybe, is that a list you've learned? Because you can give me that list, and I will know the names of your nephews as well.
Yeah.
And I will not have the memory, right? But I will have the names of your nephews. But if I now ask you which of those is the oldest, you will probably know, and I won't, because it's not on the list. I cannot learn that. But you have the history and all the events, like, hey, I remember my first nephew because that was my brother's little kid, whatever. I mean, there's probably an event in our brain like, okay, that's the oldest one because I remember that. So now we have these events, and we can start asking different questions.
Yeah.
And I think we're not used to thinking about events in that way. That those are the little memories that we have, based on which we can then extract knowledge. But we've only stored the knowledge in those systems, and now, I mean, that's learning French in, I don't know how you've learned French in school, if at all, but we used to have these lists of words that you need to memorize. Well, you're just building a little bit of knowledge, right? It still happens. But you can learn a language like that, right? You just learn so in the end, everybody's French lessons, and I hope that we don't have too many teachers listening, or maybe I do, but that's not the way you have to build these emotions, and maybe French is a good example.
I think you're hitting a really important point, is that memory is an incredibly important. And when people say communication, they're stuck in the, like, how do I get my point across to you now? But really, with communication, it doesn't matter how well I do it. And if you understand what I say right now, but when you go home, you forget exactly what I said. The way that humans work is on these storylines, right? I keep going back to, the evolution of human beings, how civilization started. Before books were written, we still somehow were able to pass on knowledge. And this happens in other species, and it's copying, it's storylines, it's the fact that you can recall a story, and it permeates all sorts of areas of life. Like salespeople will always use a story to sell you something because they talk about the story of someone with a problem and they finally find your product and this is what a great outcome it had, and so it's all of these things. But when they put it in the story form, that person remembers, oh yeah, Joe had a problem with his car and he went to this mechanic, and now I remember this mechanic, because they remember that, it imprinted in their heads. For some reason, stories stick in our heads because that's how we evolved. And so if we use notations and mechanisms that are not native to our brains, they're not going to be as good. So that's why we don't have if statements or branching in an event model, because now I don't want you to have to flip back to the diagram every half an hour to do your job, right? And I think if you look at a complex sequence diagram or activity diagram with a whole bunch of branching, and you find yourself implementing that, you'll notice that you're flipping back and forth way more than you would with something else. An example sequence of events, or an example via an event model where you really just understand what's going on. I don't find myself flipping back as much as I used to with UML or anything else. It just seems to stick in your head that, oh yeah, this is the story, this is the happy path. Everything kind of hangs off of this happy path. Yes, I have some variations, maybe even entirely different workflows that can jump out due to a condition, but I have the basics. I'm not going back for the basics to the diagram.
And I suddenly, something started to connect where we talked about big design up front, right? Being how good or bad is that? And I think some of that has to do with the fact that we only store, let's say, knowledge and not the events, right? Not the memories, but the knowledge. So you need to know upfront exactly what you're going to need as knowledge, because if you don't have the list of nephews, you're never going to be able to answer what those nephews are. But now we also need to think about, okay, what other questions do I have? Because I have to take into account everything that I might need to know in the future. Whereas if you store those memories, you don't have to design up front. Well, yes, you have to design the behavior up front, but the behavior you want now, you keep those memories, you have them around, and now you can adjust. Whatever you encounter, you have that. It's now part of your memory. It's part of your collective intelligence or of your system, and now you can use that in different ways. And I think people grossly underestimate the power of that, and very quickly dismiss it under, oh, that's not going to perform. Oh, it's going to require too much storage.
But why is that? Why is that?
Well, because in the 80s,
companies do the same.
4 MB disks.
It's not only people. Companies do the same. So in general, for me, it's very clear that event modeling in combination with event sourcing solves this AI thing for most companies. This would be a good solution for most companies to integrate AI into all the processes. But this is not what is happening right now. I see more and more companies starting to adopt event sourcing. But if you look at all the companies, this is not what is happening in the industry, not at all. So most companies shy away out of fear, out of complexity. I don't know. Why is that?
It's just it's not what they've been doing. They're unfamiliar. That's all that's happening. And like any other thing that we've had in the industry that's changing. But what I like about this, and it's a previous discussion, I think, is that AI is kind of like the shock to the system, because there's something so new that can't be ignored, and it's affecting everything all at once everywhere. And so it's the earthquake that affects everyone equally. So it's also not something that's making necessarily one company more advantageous than another, unless you're in this like we are. But for most companies out there, it's like, well, if other companies, if my competitor can do this in a day where it takes us 5 days because we haven't used AI and we haven't done these things, well, they're kind of forced to do these things. So I think right now, Martin, there's an interruption to we can't keep doing things the way we were doing, or we will not have a company. I mean, forget about people losing their jobs. We're just not going to have a company.
Yeah.
So it's a necessary thing that happens, and yeah, the reason people are against this is nothing. They're not actually. They're not against any of this. They're just they have a fear of doing something new where they've been collecting a paycheck and wanting to retire, in at some point, and they're not willing to risk the future of themselves or their families on trying something fancy and new. But now
Which is exactly what happens.
this hammer has hit the industry, and everything's fallen out of all the trees all at once at the same time, and we have to scramble and get back up and do things. But a lot of the structures that we're used to are gone. And what we're discovering now is that, yeah, there is fundamentally better ways of working with information systems that are more in tune to how we naturally would have had. We have an excuse to shed the ruts in the road that were formed when the industry forced us to discard old state because of the expense of storing data. That expense of storing data hasn't been a factor for a long time, but the patterns of how we work in the industry have ingrained themselves from that era. That's all that we're seeing.
Yeah.
I feel that a lot of people, I mean, a lot of engineers already have been around when the cloud wave came around, right? And it did have some impact. And if you look back, it did have a severe impact on how we build software, mostly for the better, right? But a lot of the design principles have changed since then. If you build distributed systems like you were building the mainframe system back in the days, you wouldn't be building a proper system.
You mean
And
SOA doesn't
already
work
there,
or what?
sorry?
You mean SOA doesn't work or what do you mean?
Exactly.
I want my soap.
So the thing is that we've learned our lessons, but they were, a slap on the wrist at best, right? But I'm afraid, and I'm trying to tell myself, nah, it can't be that bad. No, it's going to be something similar. But every time I look into what's already happening, I mean, you don't have to look that far back or that far. You don't have to have a crystal ball and look in the future. You can already see that AI, as you say, is disrupting every layer of an organization, right? If you look at Gregor Hoppe, he looks at organizations like a building, right? And you have several layers in that building, and they say the architect has to be the one in the elevator talking to the better you are as an architect, the more layers you can cover of this building. But AI is just hitting all of it, everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Not just the developers. It's just getting there. So we can pretend it's not there, but then it will hit us from another floor. There's no avoiding it. And I feel that a lot of developers fear, like I'm not using AI because I'm afraid it's going to take my job. Well, that's not gonna help, right? I think the only way is I think we can become a better engineer by embracing it and finding out how it can help us or how can it help the other layers as well. We need to rethink about how we architect our systems.
Yeah.
And it better be good, right? What you use to put when you're investing in automation through AI, it better be something that you've proven without AI. Because to this day, I can say that our best developers are faster without AI. Now, before I get driven out with pitchforks and torches out of here, it's because we have such a small set of patterns that when someone is implementing this, and again, I think we discussed this on a previous episode, Martin, but it's having, like, if you're familiar with IntelliJ and JetBrains tooling and all of the IDEs that had the abstract syntax tree behind the scenes to logically lay out the way the code worked. And you said, I want to extract method, or I want to promote a variable to a parameter, or whatever. you wanted to have those things done pretty quickly, including live templates, right? So live templates in IntelliJ tools are like, hey, I always do a command handler this way. So like if I press, whatever my shortcut is for insert a command handler, it can get a whole bunch of placeholders for things I can type in. So it's like a template that you can fill in. But it's dynamic, and I don't even know what the latest ones are. I think they can even get context from the current file so that you can have some things that are automatically filled for you. But anyway, because we have such so few patterns in our implementations, there are people that are generating code faster using live templates and refactoring in IntelliJ than you can wait for Claude to type those out. And that is a mark of having a predictable, simple system of being able to go forward and be sort of the software factory in information system automations. Like you need to go that fast. So there still are places. Now, this will go away, but I think fundamentally what will go away is really the language. So it won't be, it won't be a live template that you're filling out. You're just filling out an event model. And you can quickly specify, your given when ends or the timeline that shows the exceptions and variations down below. I want to use the more friendly terms here for people, but this is something that I'm seeing. We have people that refuse to use AI not because they are against AI, but simply the current AI tooling is not fast enough for a really good system where they have the templates ready so fast that the time that would take them to write the prompt is better spent just hitting the shortcuts to do the thing, right? And that's very few. That we're talking about the top 10th of 1% of developers out there that can do this. It's a very exclusive club.
And the question is, for how long will they be able to do that? Because at some point,
Yeah.
AI is evolving. You can
Well,
also
the
say,
compiler is
well,
going to be replaced by AI on them, so it won't matter to them. They won't have to change because the tools and languages around them will change, so that they're no longer in Java or JavaScript or C# or whatever. They're going to be in something that doesn't have the clumsiness of the syntax of something highly technical, like event model. There's a shorthand for, I mean, a lot of the developers that made event modeling tooling initially were developers, and they wanted to have, insert a slice, control I or whatever they had as a shortcut. They were built with shortcuts for that level of productivity. So people are already there thinking that it has to be fast to be able to specify those things, right?
But I mean, give those developers the right AI tooling. This is your 100x developer then.
Well, maybe. I mean, we can have a discussion. I'm talking about certain people that understand what I'm talking about within our own company that are able to do that, right? So we can have a discussion with our CTO because he has, not reservations, but he has like, hey, these are the realities of applying AI. Felix, the PewDiePie guy, had built his own rig out of 10 GPUs. You can look it up on YouTube. And he found a model that fit those 10 GPUs perfectly. And so locally, he had an AI that was incredibly fast for generating stuff. Maybe at that level where you have the same response that a shortcut has for a coder that's at that level, then yeah. I mean, it's inevitable. I think it's just the shift from using and not using AI is a different time frame and also different reasons, right? There is no way that I can tell some of our guys to say, you should prompt that next slice, because like, why? By the time I'm writing the first 2 words of my prompt, I have the slice implemented. Why would I take the extra time to do that? Because it's so well refined. Instead of typing in the event name, they're typing the event name right there, and the templates are so well formed that it's literally the longer to specify what it is than to have it. Now the good thing is, once the languages move to be event models rather than programming languages, is that's a one-to-one. Now, because we have, and I can show at another time, these the way the the structure of a slice is in code. We didn't get to do it in the conference, but I can show at any point that the places where the code lives can be reversed engineered to make an event model out of that very, very easily. So I see them as interchangeable. You should go to where you're most effective. And if someone is more effective because they've already put in 10 years of making live templates and understand the refactoring tools in a specific IDE, that makes them go so fast that it's actually slower to write a prompt. Why would I force them to write a prompt? Right? But at the same time, do I keep that knowledge isolated because it's just a developer and it only lives in code? No. But this pathway between event model and the code should be one-to-one and translatable both ways. So I see the structure of a slice in my code as being a mirror image of what I see in the event model behind me. And there's no reason why I can't have the event model immediately reflect what that implementation is. And maybe, the developer can change a few things here and there, but they can go either side. It's up to them which way they're going. So yeah, there's definitely all of the stuff that we've done, ironically out of TDD, because we did katas and how to refactor quickly. We needed to be really nimble with Agile because we needed to refactor and make the code really malleable. So we needed these code navigation tools, go to definition, go to find all my implementations, inline this code, extract this method, promote this variable to parameter, whatever it is. We needed to have those as like muscle memory. We did like coding katas on this and all this kind of stuff. That's not wasted effort, right? That's really understanding how to navigate a solution, whether it's at the code level or whether it's at an event modeling level. So those are good things, useful skills to have. And I don't think the minute that AI is there, we stop people from using those skills. They can still use them if that's where they are. And it's really up to us as tool makers to provide the mapping both ways. Hey, why can't you make your code immediately update the event model? Oh, maybe the way that you're coding is to ad hoc because you haven't refined a good enough system. Maybe you're not as good an architect as you thought you were, right? So those are like hard questions.
Nobody's going to use a tool that tells them that.
Those are, those are a lot of those are hard questions for ourselves. The industry is testing us as to, where are we wasting our time? Where are we fooling ourselves? Where are we just monetizing stuff? Where are we actually producing something of value all these other years? This is
So maybe AI is not just an accelerant; it's also a magnifying glass.
It is. Yeah, it is a magnifying glass because
Mirror.
all your really long feedback loops are shrunk incredibly small, and you find out immediately. And so it definitely does allow you to focus in, like you say, find a magnifying glass to like your process sucks because you've always overlooked this part, and now it's glaringly obvious because you're not hiding. You can't hide behind long workflows in the enterprise to hide in meetings and excuse yourself at every stand-up. It's gone, right? So. Yeah, stand-up won't save you anymore.
Exactly. Right.
Anyway, fun discussion.
We're nearing the end of our. I already warned when we planned this for 2 hours. Like that's going to be too long. I said no.
It's
no,
just getting started.
Yeah, it's good enough for the introduction.
Yeah.
But we do have the possibility for people to comment, which is great. We already see.
Yeah, we have a ton of comments. I don't know who wants to go through those.
I was
Who wants to?
discussion.
But we have a lot of highs. Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm scrolling back to the very beginning.
There's definitely a lot of comments around the points that we're making in the discussion, so that's good. Yeah, people are talking about writing code becomes obsolete. Well, to some extent, and I think there's still as I said, the time that we're going to spend doing different things, I think the time that we're going to spend writing code will be less because we'll have ways to automate much of it. But there's still, and that's the part, we are still responsible. We still need to be in control. It's like having an automatic car, right? Yes, the gear shifting is now done by a computer. And in many cases, that computer is better at it than yourself, even though sometimes the emotion of doing it manually is really
It's like
lovely.
those elite coders that can use those templates. That's the person that
Exactly.
needs
There's
the
a few.
manual shifter.
Yeah,
But those are the
exactly.
only ones. Yeah.
There's a very few, and there's only very few cases where you need that. Yes, on a racetrack, probably, you want to anticipate a little bit more, and great. But most of us don't code on a racetrack or etc.
Yeah.
So it's where do I want to go? Yeah, it's automating a part that we really should not care about that much, and let's spend less time. But it doesn't mean that we're not in control anymore, right? We shouldn't trust the AI or become lazy, no matter which of the two it actually is, and just tell the AI do what I believe. There's still a responsibility of what it produces and what goes to production. How do I make sure that's correct? And yes, we want to automate that, but do you want to automate that in a non-deterministic way? Probably
Yeah.
not. So you still, and I made a comment that I think AI is going to help us to rediscover true engineering
Yeah.
and not get bogged down in this lovely. I mean, yeah, it's fun writing code. I love
Yeah, it
it
is. Yeah.
every now and then, right? It's just like it's fun to build a little soapbox, right? And ride
Yeah.
it downhill, but it's
You
not a
can
profession.
Yeah, you can buy a doghouse, or you can go and build one and practice your woodworking skills, and there's joy
Exactly.
in the craft. And
Yeah.
absolutely, it probably won't be as good, or maybe if you're a good carpenter, it might be better than what you can buy. It could be either or, but the idea is that there's enjoyment out of the craft. I think there's a more friendly way to answer that question: is coding dead? Why are we not asking the same thing whenever a new language comes out? When Rust came out, why is everyone, not saying that the industry's changed? When Microsoft came out with C Sharp, was why, maybe Java's going to die because of it. All of these things. Like, I think to say that programming languages will stop evolving because of AI is silly. I think what's really happening is that coding is not dead, but maybe the languages you're used to are, because they're too detailed. You need to be able to express things at the level of something like event modeling to go fast in this new age. And so it's not that programming or coding is dead. It's just that the concept of a programming language is going to be so much closer to human language than we've ever seen before, because we went from assembler to C, then to other things. And oh, Python's beautiful. Oh, everyone loves Ruby. Look how you don't have to have semicolons. Awesome, right? Like, whatever. This is a progression, but it's a leap, order of magnitude leap in what defines a programming language. So I think yes and no. Coding is dead, and it is at the same time. Coding is not dead because you're just going to be using a different programming language at a different abstraction level, and that's what we've been doing through the industry for decades. It is dead because you won't recognize code as the code you see these
Yeah.
days.
I mean, when we talk about coding, what most people think is writing text files like we did in the 60s. I mean, if you look at what coding is, it hasn't really changed in the last 40 years or something. So that is something that will definitely change. And what you need to provide is a way to just tell AI, to prove that the thing that
Well, what
AI
is code?
generated.
What is code? Code is instructions for the computer.
Yes, exactly.
What is a prompt?
It's the same.
Right.
What you
Nothing's
need is...
Everything's changed and nothing's changed at the same time.
Yeah, I know. But when you tell AI to generate your code, you need a way to prove, okay, is it right or is it wrong? And you can't review these pull requests. This is not sustainable. So what you need is, what I do is I generate test cases from the given when-thens. It's already in the event model.
Yeah.
I generate test cases from the given when-thens. These are the rules that your business people specified. So if you generate tests from these given when-thens and these tests are green, your application works by definition. So this is exactly what you need. So I don't want to write code. For me, coding as we do it today is dead.
Well,
I don't want to write text
some
files.
people love writing code. I love writing code. I think a lot of
That
people
is,
want to
of
write code.
course, if you want to write code, you will also do it in 10 years, but you don't have to. That's the
There's
difference.
people that love to do complex multiplications by hand or complex divisions or whatever by
Yeah.
hand, right? You do that. But when you're in a grocery store and wonder, okay, a six pack of something costs this, how much does one cost? Okay, usually that's not complex, but you
For
use a
some people, it
calculator
is.
for that kind of stuff because you just need a result, right? And
Yeah.
if a company is paying you for outcome, you should not be crafting your doghouse, right? You
Yeah.
should be making a good economic decision on whether do I spend building this or do I, and I think that's something we need to learn. That is not always about crafting the beautiful stuff together, because that's financially not always the best solution, right?
Yeah, and the people who can write beautiful code will be the same people today that can craft beautiful soap messages. I know a few people who are really good at soap, but these skills are not really marketable nowadays. So if you want to do it, that's fine. Do it for fun.
Yeah.
But will someone pay you for this? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the same. You and I, Martin, both had the same love of Git when it came out, and right now, do I really want to be proud and monetize understanding all the parameters for a filter branch Git subcommand,
No.
right?
I still do. I still do it, but because
I
I
know,
use it so much.
but
But
I've also stopped doing it. I mean, I've
yeah,
I've now pressed Control K in the terminal in Cursor. I no longer open the terminal. I open Cursor because I have Control K on the terminal in Cursor, and I make the terminal window full. The pane take up the whole thing if I'm doing a lot of scripting stuff, and most of the stuff I'm pressing. This is one case where there is not enough templates, at least for all the ad hoc stuff that I'm doing on the command line. It's not event sourcing. So I am pressing Control K to say, copy these sets of files that I just listed to this location, because I don't want to figure out where to stop typing and put the star, and what options to pick, whether I preserve the creation data or modification data or whatever for archive and all
yeah.
these other things that you have. It does it for me. And same with Git. Sometimes I'll say, my history in this terminal, it has everything that you need to know. Make me a new branch here from the last start tag. Okay, done. Like, yes, I could have scripted that, but why? I just said that, and even then, at least in Fish Shell, I can type in branch and hit up arrow a couple of times, and it'll recall exactly what AI did for me last time, right? Then I can make some sort of autocomplete if I want, and I'm not writing it by hand. I go back to my autocomplete scripts and I say, you know what? Give me autofill, tab complete these things via the last 20 tags that I have for start, so I can just tab through them, and it'll do it for me. It's just a completely awesome world now that we live in. It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. We're approaching the end of our time slot, so I think it's good to.
So we should probably announce a couple of things, wrap things up.
Yeah.
Any last questions in the chat, and then we got 5 minutes to wrap
There's
things up.
some comments.
I
So
think
I'm wondering, companies that will not start using event modeling, event sourcing as a default. I mean, it's not the solution to everything, but I like the way Martin framed it recently on a LinkedIn post. It is my default way. I need to find a good reason to not use it. Otherwise, I will just use it and figure out if it was a good thing, because it's easier to go from that to something else than the other way around. But what's going to happen to organizations that are not going to embrace this properly when the big AI stick comes to hit them? That's
I don't think all of them are going to die. There's going to be clients that also are slow enough and whatever and don't move to something. I mean, eventually they will, but there'll always be patterns of information and automation movement that are kind of not dynamic, and they'll stay there. There'll be few of them, we kind of see like old banking systems are still working the same kind of way. They are going away slowly. You know, you have all these new companies coming up that are revolutionizing and digitizing more as to how we do our personal banking and investing and whatever else, right?
But they get acquired by the big banks as soon
They
as
may.
someone
I mean,
moves
yeah, they might
forward.
just lose so much value that just become a blip, and they might get bought out and just retired, or just kept on a skeleton crew, because maybe for a modern company that's just pennies on the dollar to keep them alive and keep keep another revenue stream going. That's just free money for them, really. And yeah, but there's another question that came in. It's a neophyte here, and I want to, it caught my attention because we want to answer people that are coming at it from the perspective of like, hey, I don't know anything about this. But so the problem with the hallucinations, I wanted to preemptively add that the way that when you're doing event modeling and event sourcing, the hallucinations actually work for you. I have a good example of that online from last year, when I was first copy pasting what's behind me. You know, one of those vertical pieces of timelines there that said that specified how something's supposed to work. When I pasted that in, it gave me exactly the right implementation and all the test cases, and it all passed on the first go, and so there was no hallucinations. But with an asterisk, actually there was a hallucination, and the hallucination was that it added one more test case, and it was one that I missed that I should have had. So it actually hallucinated in the positive direction. So if you're doing event modeling and event sourcing properly, you will not have hallucinations as a problem. At least nowhere near
No,
to
I
I
what
also
don't.
others are
wonder if a
reporting. Nowhere
hallucination
near.
is a hallucination of AI, or is it just a poor prompt? Sometimes it's just that, oh yeah, you did ask or you did do what I asked you to do, but not what I intended you to do. And my
Yeah.
question could be interpreted in a different way. And this is what I talked about earlier with the scope of the width of how far you can go in interpreting something in event modeling is a lot smaller because all the
Yeah.
slices are so
Yeah,
specific. I think that's really important. And if it
it's
does hallucinate, you want to keep track of where it hallucinated, so at least capture those events or memories in those decisions that it took in the system, for example.
yeah, but in practice, I have very rarely problems with AI hallucinating. It's really hard to hallucinate within a slice. There's no
Yeah,
vagueness,
the
nothing. It's
scope is
very
so
clearly
small.
defined. The scope is so small. It has to be really creative to start hallucinating in there. There's
Or you
nothing
have
to
to,
do. Yeah.
or you have to have specifications that are at odds. Like for example, if you
Exactly,
own a
but
mistake. Yeah.
exactly. If that happens, it's a clear indication. Oh, I might revisit this part of the model. Maybe it's not that clear as I thought.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's both. I mean, for hallucinations, it's usually someone trying to get everything done for very little effort with not enough specifications. So that what they consider hallucination is really the AI reaching for what most people in the training data would have answered for, would have given as an answer to any of those spots that are missing in your specification. So no, the hallucinations are actually, and there's a study there that said 85% of companies cannot make use of AI and hasn't made them more productive. The important question is, well, what are the 15% doing that makes them more effective? Because most of the industry in IT is dysfunctional. They don't specify well enough. They try to make God classes out of an abstraction. It's the entire database model is really one model to serve all purposes, and you're never going to satisfy everyone all the time. Here we have purpose-built models. We have a single source of truth that's undeniable because it's the inbound data that's marked down as a fact that you can't argue with. That's the tiebreaker for all things. So it's a very good question. Why don't we have a hallucination problem? And it's probably a good litmus test is that if you're going to take on a technology and approach or whatever, the number of hallucinations that get in the way is a good way to tell whether you're onto using something good or bad. If you're getting a lot of hallucinations, you should drop it. You should not even attempt to continue on because it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get better.
Yeah, and a good test I always use is I can chat with my model, and if the answers I get from the AI about my model, I can just ask it questions, explain how that works. If AI cannot explain how a certain functionality works, I know exactly this model is not good yet. I need to revisit it. It's the same thing.
Yeah. So, and also the security, very easy answer. Security can be overlaid on event model, or actually included in the event model, such as role-based access, authentication, authorization can be explicitly event modeled. Whether you implement it yourself or not, that's up to you. But yeah, thanks for those last two questions there from our chat. I wish you guys asked them earlier when we didn't have like a minute left.
Well, maybe we should do this again. Just
Yeah,
on a
exactly.
random
Yeah.
Tuesday.
It's very
somewhere.
enjoyable. Yeah, if maybe we call it a fireside chat and we have it every 1 or 2 months, I would be definitely happy to do this again because it'll be a different world in 2 months. We all know, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, everything is upside down again in 2 months.
So we should probably
what should
close.
people do if they want to know more about event modeling? They should go to eventmodeling.org, obviously. But you mentioned a workshop, which I can absolutely
December
recommend.
9th. So yeah, Martin and I are doing that on December 9th. Adaptecgroup.com. Go to the workshop site page. The section there. But also on eventmodeling.org, there is a workshop link there. It has the old date, but if you click on it, it'll take you to the proper one. I haven't updated the eventmodeling.org site yet, which I will. It says same link, so it takes you to the same place. So if you want to do that, that's great. But also don't miss out on Martin's book, Understanding Event Sourcing, on LeanPub. That's really good. Definitely should be on your desk. It's going to be something that gets you through the next few crazy years of changing stuff, because you will think in this progression of state, orderly way of dissecting complexity into something that's understandable, and that's going to be something that'll help you in anything that this industry is going to throw at you. You'll have a systematic way of understanding what you want to do. So I highly recommend Martin's book. So definitely.
And yeah, just to answer the last question, yes, event modeling and everything works for tech people and non-tech people. So
Yeah.
I know a lot of non-tech people who read my book and who really understand what it's about. So you don't have any tech, don't have to have any tech background.
That's the whole
to get
point
into
of this discussion, is that this is a bridge. We're at a crossroads here where we need to be on the same page. We need to have a unified approach to how we deal with information and systems in the world. And what we're doing.
We can no
here
longer
is-
afford to separate tech from
Yeah.
non-tech. The wider that separation is, the more your chance of not surviving this wave of AI, because information systems are going to go faster, more complex. There's going to be more demands, so we really need to get closer. And I think, to me, AI can help us solve the problem that same AI is potentially creating in our systems.
Yeah.
We can use AI to help us bridge that gap between tech and non-tech. Understanding event sourcing is the name of the book. Yeah. Google.
So I'm just writing out the.
It's on LeanPub.
Yeah, it's on LeanPub and Amazon. If you want the printed copy, let me see. I'll show you what it looks like. Here it is. I think this is the one that Martin sent me. That's actually signed. Thank you, Martin.
It looks much bigger than it actually is.
It
I know
actually
people
is not.
who read it in one day, so it's readable in
No,
one
so
day.
if you look, Martin is good at using white space, but he's also really good at including lots of diagrams to explain the concepts. So the book is actually quite useful. A lot of the things like the automations that you see are explained clearly here.
It reads like a children's book. You just
Yeah,
whiz through
so
it.
everything's clearly explained. All the stuff you see behind me, it's dissected bit by bit in this book. So with plenty of examples that you can go through, and it's for both technical and non-technical people. And yeah, if you're going to survive the next stage of AI, the answers aren't really in AI. The answers are in how you understand information systems, and this is the top book in my mind on the subject. So it's been on the #1 bestseller on LeanPub for a long time, and many weeks, and in the top 10 all the time. So people are buying it. Also, if you want the hard copy, it's on Amazon. Just type in Understanding Event Sourcing.
I actually recommend the EPUB because you can buy it right now, and you can start reading right now.
Yeah.
You don't
And
have
there's
to wait for it to be delivered.
much more chapters in the ebook than in the printed
Yeah.
copy.
Really? Okay.
So yeah.
But if you want to look smart and have a bookcase behind you with this sitting there, definitely get that one too.
I know a few companies, they buy the books and they just place it everywhere in the building. So these books are lying around everywhere because it just looks good. So yeah, if you want to do that, feel free.
Yeah.
Smart in one mind.
Yeah. So also, Allard, from your side, Axonic is going with version 5 of the framework, correct?
Yeah, we recently released Axon 5, which is quite exciting. We took the event modeling approach actually, and much more slice based. So really, just the command is now the actual instruction to the system, and how do you want to deal with that? No more. Well, if you want aggregates, if you really want to show that you do understand them, you can use them still, but you don't have to. So you can
We didn't even touch
behavior.
on dynamic context boundary
No, but
stuff in this discussion,
we
which
don't-
would be another 2 hours.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
So much to discuss. That's crazy. Yeah.
But no, if people want to play around, so our interpretation of event modeling, which is not with stickies but with stories, is on platform.axonic.io. If you want to play around with that, I'm very curious what everybody thinks. We've taken a slightly different approach to how to describe the model in that sense. But in essence, the core of the model is still there, and yeah, we're just experimenting a little bit as well with how can
we have plans
make it efficient.
to build the front end to be an event modeled front end for you. I know that the Axon framework is focused on the back end to make sure the systems have the backbone to make whatever UI you have, whatever apps you have work really well. But we want to contribute on the event modeling side, that interface side. So I think this is we've been in talks since the conference about really getting this going, and I'm really excited about all the stuff we're doing here on our side, and to really have the two sides kind of meet in the middle and get the best of both worlds in the final solution. So really looking forward to 2026 because
Me too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good stuff is going to happen in that
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, and I think a good thing to finish the conversation on is back to where we started is the multiplier of how computers made us 10 times as productive. And I think you're one of the slides in your keynote at both conferences was that this AI multiplier is way bigger than any previous automation multiplier we've seen in history, and I totally agree. I think the amount of information that's at our fingertips has multiplied many fold, and then how we work. And so I think that was probably one of the best keynotes about the state of impact of AI that I've seen ever. So thanks for including that reality check for everyone in that slide.
And I think it's on YouTube. So if you look for the Axonic
you should.
conference,
Absolutely.
Look for Allard's keynote from the last Axonic one. Definitely highly recommend that talk because it just hits you between the eyes like holy smokes. Yeah, we got to be prepared for this stuff because when you look at it in comparison to all the other breakthroughs that we had in tech, this is definitely an opening of a huge new
I
chapter.
like how Travis Oliphant framed it. He said it's going to be messy, but it's depending on how we respond to AI right now, we decide how messy it's going to be. But eventually, everything will be all right. But it's just how messy is that time in between.
How much thrashing do we go through before we settle on the new best practices and whatever? I think we're actually going to have going back to basics. I think computers are going to be serving us better than we were serving them before.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And on that note, maybe we should just end it. Otherwise,
Let's
we'll
wrap it up.
spend 2 more
We
hours.
go another 2 hours.
We could go on forever.
It's
we should
late for
probably
you guys.
schedule
You
it.
gotta go eat dinner and stuff, and I gotta start my day.
All right.
Have
Well,
fun in
thanks
Europe.
for,
That was fun, definitely.
Thanks for jumping on the call. I hope that it wasn't just fun for the 3 of us, but also some other people.
Yeah.
And if not, it was their choice to click on that link and join us.
I'm looking forward to the next time. We should schedule one now.
Yeah, next time we do 3 hours. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Fantastic. Have a great rest of your day, guys.
Take
See
care.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.